All right, peoples. Welcome to the Even People Show. I am your host, Martin Matthews, and I have a different kind of show for y'all tonight. Um, we're gonna mix it up. It's gonna be a quick show. Every time I say that, it ends up not being a quick show. But let's swing for the fences, anyways. If it's your first time joining the show, hi, I'm your host, Martin Matthews. I'm an author. I write poetry. My book's called Love, Life, Confrontation, Expressions, Selections from the Chronicles of a Black Man, available in Fontana pharmacies in Jamaica and worldwide on Amazon.com. You hear I sound? What's going on my throat? So before we get into it, last week we had a show called Why Him, Why Her. Spoke about a little bit of why him, why her last week, and we were talking about why, what makes a woman attracted to a man? What does a woman like? Why does a woman like a man? Why does a man like a woman? One of the questions we asked pretty earlier on is Vimbai, check it in, greetings. One of the questions we asked earlier on is, in your mind, what could you do to make yourself more attractive to the opposite sex? Whether you're a man or a woman, we came up with a lot of things that we thought people could do or people think they should do to make themselves more attractive to suitors. But sometimes, as we found out during the show, this is just your perception. And the opposite sex or the people you're trying to attract actually don't go for the things that you think you need to do to make yourself more attractive. And sometimes, even if they go for those things, it's just a safe bet. It's really not the things that lights their fire. It's not the thing that's going to keep you happily married for a long period of time. It's just the thing that's going to make you a safe choice because you made sure you went through and checked all the boxes you think should be checked, and you checked them, and you ended up with some person, but it's really not the light fire type of relationship, and ultimately you don't get what you want in the end. That was last week. If you missed that show, go check it out. It was actually a good show, lots of interaction, and we had some good times. So this week, on the flip side of things, there's a lot of things that happened this week, and I felt myself having a lot of opinions about a lot of those things. So I figured, you know what? Let's do a show about those things. Let's mix it up a little bit here on the Evening People Show and see how much trouble we do or do not get into. So we're gonna start off easy. Gonna start off nice and easy before we get into the thick of the shenanigans. And we're gonna talk about the fact that one person that I admire that does live TV, Trevor Noah, he announced his retirement from the Daily Show with Trevor Noah this week after 7 years. Now, he's somebody I've always admired. He's somebody I've admired for a very long time. Ever since he came on the scene, South African native who owns where he's from, and that's probably what got me on the Trevor Noah train earlier on, because a lot of people try so hard to, when they move away from certain parts of the world, they try to disregard those parts of the world. Trevor held on to where he's from. He held on to who he is, and I admire him greatly as somebody that does what he does, as a comedian on TV, all that. Love the guy. But anyways, he's leaving the Daily Show after 7 years. In the realm of shenanigans, Rihanna Rihanna is going back to work. I saw a meme this week that said, Having a baby is so expensive. Even Rihanna's going back to work. Can you imagine? She's a billionaire. How about you and me, right? But she's gonna do the halftime show for she's gonna do the halftime show for the Super Bowl next year. And the halftime show of the Super Bowl, it's gonna be lit. This year, I love this year. This year, I think, was one of my favorite years. Those boys in the West Coast sure know how to do it. They came out and they represented in a really, really big way. And I love that. So we'll see what Rihanna, and it's probably, I don't know if she's gonna perform between then and now, but when she comes on the scene, she brings a party when she comes to town, and she will not be outdone. So that's something to look forward to. Now we're gonna keep it moving. Now I'm gonna slow down a little bit for this one. Uh because there's a couple different ways we're gonna look at this next one here. And we're going to deal with the factual things first this week, and then we're going to talk about the fictional ones. And there's just a couple that I'm going to pick because so much happened this week. But one of those things that happened to my current home state of Florida is that, and several places around the Caribbean, is that Hurricane Ian came to town this week. And Hurricane Ian came on Wednesday at a whopping 150 miles per hour. Now, 150 miles per hour is a Cat 4 if you're not familiar. And if you've never been through a hurricane, a Cat 4 hurricane is really not something you want to mess with. 150 miles per hour winds will destroy a lot of things if you didn't know. And it came through and it did quite a bit of damage, especially on the parts of the country that it made landfall. It ripped the place apart. Statistics in the 2.6 million people lost power, widespread flooding in areas that don't even usually get flooding when hurricanes come to Florida. Some places, even here in Orlando, up to 15 inches of rain was reported. Up to 15 inches of rain. They're saying in some areas up to 20 inches of rain. Now, stick a pin there for a second. 15 inches of rain, if you didn't know. Think about for a second the things in your house that are below 15 inches high. Okay? So for most of us, our sofa is not 15 inches off the ground. It's about, for some of them, there's as little as 3-4 inches off the ground. Some of them are 5-6. So in 15 inches of water, your sofa is floating. Your bed is not 15 inches off the ground a lot of the times. The bed itself might be, or where you lie down might be, but the base isn't. So in 15 inches of water, your bed is floating. And there's several other things in your house that's actually floating by the time you get to 15 inches. Now, if there's 15 inches of rainfall, it doesn't mean that you're only going to get 15 inches in your house, because if your house is somehow on a slope, then the water is going to pile up there. And even when the water enters and it starts hitting the wall of your house, it's going to go up until it reaches a window or something to go through. It's just going to keep going up. So there are a lot of people, even people I work with, that experience a lot of flooding. People have their entire houses were washed out, and they really have quite a ways to go before they get back to recovery. Right now, amidst all that, there was also a lot of car flooding too, by the way, because a lot of roadways got flooded. There's an individual I know who sent me some pictures, and he sent me the first picture he sent. He said, "That's my car." Then he sent me a picture of 3 more cars, and he says, "That's all the other cars in the family." So his wife's car, his kid's car, and they're both, everything's floating. And literally, like, the water is above the bonnet of the car. So you know that's going to take something doing. Now, 2 things we're going to talk about here. The first of them being one of the individuals I spoke to that totally got washed out. I don't know if you remember, or if you remember, we did a show here a while back about insurance. And the show we did about insurance had on there, or while I was talking about it, one of the things I was going on about was how you can have insurance on your house. You can have hurricane insurance even on your house. But if you don't have flood insurance and your house gets flooded as a result of a hurricane, your insurance company will not cover the damages. And I know several people that are right now in that situation. They were technically not in a flood zone, so they did not get flood insurance. However, the way the hurricane came, the trajectory it took, the rainfall that followed it, Their area got flooded, their house got flooded, everything got washed away. They have hurricane insurance, they do not have flood insurance separately. And even though the flooding was a byproduct of the hurricane, the insurance company is not covering it, right? Um, Comment here from Vemai says, people are really feeling the pain right now, and some of them really are. A lot of people really are, because can you imagine, you have the insurance, you think you have it to cover you, the thing that you thought you were insuring against takes place, only to find out that you're not covered. And now where do you go from there? Everything is flooded, everything is washed out. And like I said, for a lot of the people that got flooded this time around, their houses are not in flood zones, so they would not have prepared for the flood. The people in flood zones, they know they're in a flood zone. They get the sandbags. They do the things that are necessary. They probably left. They probably put stuff higher up, or if there is a two-floor house, they took stuff upstairs in anticipation of the flooding. People who are not in flood zones, some of them didn't realize they were having a problem until they had a problem. Until you look outside and see the house, see the car already swimming, or you hear the water knocking on your door, and by the time it gets that far, you already have a problem. So there's a lot of people right now that are going through that, just dealing with it, and it's gonna be a while before a lot of them have reached back to anything looking like normalcy. So that's one side of it. Hurricanes suck. They typically do. Tornadoes came with this particular hurricane, and a lot of people got it's a bad situation. And if you didn't know, now you know. Now, another thing that I want to talk about regarding this hurricane is how people that were vacationing in Florida um, have been responding to it. Now, there's a lot of comments coming out that were or that have been directed toward Disney World. A lot of people came down here for their vacations, and some of their responses, I don't know. I'm gonna read it. You tell me. So one person said, I spent my life savings to come this week, and a hurricane hit and ruined my trip. Now I have three sad kids. They won't let me schedule for tomorrow, won't even answer the phone. Um, Disney is about greed, not magic. So I read it and I didn't know what to make of it, because it's like, okay, like there are people out here losing their lives actually. Like people have died as a result of the hurricane. People have lost everything as a result of the hurricane. And I get that you had a really nice trip planned for your family to come visit Disney World, but people have died. People have lost everything. So, and then at the same time, I guess, let me read another one before we um, get right into it. This one says, I'm super bummed at the lack of communication and accommodation made for Hurricane Ian. Saved for 6 months, booked a resort package. Resort not able to accommodate food allergies, and no alternative for families for Florida to use unused tickets. What do you make of that one? Um, this one says, I've been on hold for 5 hours on the hotline. My flight was canceled. So essentially, what the outrage is, or what the outcry is, that, and some of them are less than considerate of the people that have suffered loss, especially if they lost their lives during this hurricane. Some of the comments that are coming out are really saying, hey, Disney, you ruined my trip. I came down. I wanted to have a good time. How dare you close the park? How dare you not open the park the next day? How do you do this? How do you do that? And you have to remember now, people work at Disney. And it's not like a lot of these 9 to 5 Disney people are getting paid top dollar to work at Disney, anyways. But then there's been all this outrage of people who their vacation got ruined because the park was closed, and they've taken to the internet and they're slamming Disney left and right, saying, "Hey, you ruined my vacation," um, and it goes on and on. There are dozens of them. Pathetic. 19 hours after you say phased reopening on Friday, and the park is still not open until Saturday. What if the people that are supposed to be at work are flooded? Do you not care about these people? And is it that we are, here's another one, not trying to sound entitled or anything, but My family waited 3 hours to come for vacation, and now they're saying the park is closed, Universal is closed, Disney is closed, right? And it's like, hey, people, what do you want them to do? And I get it. It's not only Disney; it's a lot of theme park type things, and people come for their vacations and whatnot. And I get it. You spent money on your vacation. You came. You wanted to have a good time, but oh my God, people, it's a hurricane. It's a Category 4 hurricane, and people lost their lives behind that stuff. Have a little consideration, why don't you? I mean, I was in Texas. I got stranded there for 2 extra days, and it was different. And I get it. I was it was for work, so it was on the company's dime. And I get it. It can be a bad situation. In fact, I ran into a family today at a gas station, and they were telling me, the guy was telling me, hey, man, like I'm trying to get some money to go back to Texas. Like my family, we were here. We ended up staying. I guess he didn't get into the details, but he was saying essentially they're stranded here now, can't get back. They don't have enough gas. They don't have food. And I gave him whatever money I had in my wallet and whatever else took place. But it's like, I get that people have been affected and being affected negatively, but you cannot lose sight of the fact that people have lost their lives and have lost everything. You just lost this year's vacation potentially. um, and you cannot be so inconsiderate that you do not consider the fact that people have lost their lives or all of their earthly belongings behind that, while you're taking to the internet to bash Disney for not answering the phone in time, or for giving you enough perks behind the fact that a hurricane came to the state of Florida during hurricane season. All right, let's see another comment here. Says that same person would be tripping if Disney stayed open and they experienced trauma. They would. If Disney was open and they went in and hurt themselves, they would be the first one suing and slamming them for another reason, because some persons are just not considerate at all. All right, we're gonna move off the hurricane. Like I said, it's gonna be a quick show, and I have a couple things I want us to get on. Not all of them as hardcore as Hurricane Ian. The other one, though, is just about up there, and it is about Iran. Now, I've made a couple of posts about this Iran situation. Iranian women have been protesting since early September at the death of a particular woman there in Iran. Um, what was her name? Her name is Masha Amani. She died in police custody, and it sparked all kinds of taken to the streets by women in Iran. Now, uh, I'm not a politician. I'm not a religious person of such that I would be preaching religion one way or the other. This has nothing to do with that for me. This has to do with what I perceive to be the rights of women to choose. Now, we had a situation here recently in the U.S. where our what was it, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and you know we're infringing on the rights of women almost more and more, it seems. And I don't know, it's almost like we're going down a path that I don't like. And this story kind of stood out to me. I saw several articles on it. I read on it just so I understood what was really taking place. And I'm just going to share what I found real quick. So here's how it really works, or what's really happened before 1979. Okay, in Iran, because of who was ruling at the time. So just like here in the US, you have the conservatives, you have the liberals. It's the same thing. Only the way of life for women in the country of Iran changes significantly depending on who's in charge. Okay. Now, pre 1979, they were not allowed to wear any headdress at all. No headdress was allowed. If they wore headdress, they had to face all kind of consequences for wearing a headdress, even though religions within the country require women to wear headdress as a part of their religious beliefs. So on the one hand, they were disregarding the religious beliefs of the people at that time. Now, post 1979, and for the past 40 years, it has now become mandatory for the hijab to be worn. And the hijab has to be worn in a very specific way. Okay, so for the past 40 years in Iran, Women have had to wear the hijab. Now, if you don't know what a hijab is, Google it. But a hijab is essentially the headscarf that you see people from Iran and Muslim women they wear. Okay, it's a part of their attire, and in Iran, it's been mandatory for them to wear. Now, in 2005, the an organization known as the Morality Police was created. The Morality Police, and no, I'm not making this up. The Morality Police was created, and their purpose is to monitor female attire. So essentially, the government at the time created a whole police force designed to monitor female attire. And when I say monitor, I mean to grab you and throw you in jail if you are not wearing your hijab just right. Okay? And that is what happened. So basically, based on who is in charge and their interpretation of the Quran, this is what determines what women are allowed to wear, or if they wear those very same thing, they'll be thrown in jail. Now, the young lady in question, Basha Amani, she's 22 years old. She was arrested. She was arrested on September 13th for not wearing her hijab just right. Now, 3 days later, she died while in police custody. The official narrative said she died from a stroke. It is believed that she might have been, experienced some kind of physical trauma from at the hands of the police. And the women have taken to the streets in Iran in a real way like they have not done in a very long time. They're burning scarves. They're doing they're cutting hair, doing all kind of things in all outward protest to the just the infringing upon their rights as women. You know what I mean? And the thing of it, like I said, it's not political for me or whatever. It's just that they are being forced to practice one religion in one way. They're being forced to do a thing that really should be within their right to do one way or the other. One way, a decision that's made by someone from the past 40 years, even though before 1979 it was the total opposite almost. So it's almost like you have these people that are in charge and just have the rights of women in their hands like this. And when they say, hey, morality police, go grab these people, lock them up, flog them in some instances, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like we're here, and here, even in America, you see women talking about rights and certain things all the time, and rights is a big thing here. But these people are literally being grabbed off the street because their headscarves are not tied properly, not tied tight enough, not loose enough, not this enough, not that enough. And God forbid they don't have it on, they're going to jail. Jail. The morality police grabs them off the street and takes them to jail. Now let that sink in. So that's kind of like my why this story has triggered me, and I hope it gets resolved. But these people have been doing this thing for a very, very long time. If you read even the scriptures back in the day, these are things that women would probably be stoned for. Literally, they'll grab them, get a pile of stones, have them kneel down over here, and stone them to death. Now they just grab them, throw them in jail, and this particular woman died while in police custody. If you didn't know, now you know. Go check it out. All right, so I can't give y'all any more heavy. I can't give y'all anything heavy behind that. I gotta let that ride right there. Have to let that ride right there. We're gonna get into fiction. All those were fact. We talked about We talked about Iran and the hijab situation down there. Now we're going to turn to some fictional news that happened this week, and one of them is, which one should I start with? Let's start with this one. Tyler Perry made a new movie, and no, it's not Madea Goes to Jamaica or Madea Comes to Florida. It is called A Jazzman's Blues. A Jazzman's Blues, it's called. It's a movie that is set in the 1930s and 40s here in the U.S. in Georgia, and it's a twisted kind of story. It's a twisted kind of story. You see the movie, and it has some of the main characters. One of them named Leanne. also called Bucket. You have Bayou, who turns out to be one of the main characters, and you have his brother Willie-earl, who by the end of the movie you are going to hate him. Spoiler alert. You're gonna hate Willie Earl by the time the movie is ended. Yes, if they had a Madea goes to Jamaica, it would be quite hilarious. Now, even before I get into that any further, let's look at this. I remember Eddie Jamaican out there, and a lot of people in general too. Steven Seagal did a show back in the day called Mark for Death. I hated the guy ever since. I don't hate Steven Seagal, but the character, he played that character so well, I hate him as a result of the character. And I get it, it's acting and you're not supposed to, but it is. Like, this guy could not have gone to Jamaica like he did in this movie and did everything he did. And I haven't liked him since. I don't know what to tell you. I've liked him less since. Wesley Snipes also made a movie back in the day called Disappearing Acts, where I believe he was abusive to his girlfriend or wife or whoever in the movie. But he played that role so well. I've hated him since. I don't like the guy. I can't stand him now. And it's just because he captured that role so well. And sometimes people do that. And it's really good acting that gets you that, really. But they capture the role so well that you actually, it's almost like your attitude toward the person changes after that, and it doesn't go back. Now, this character, Willie Earl, is gonna evoke that response in you. Now, what it is it's kind of like the classic Cinderella story. It's a family, like I said, in Georgia. Um, Slavery is still, Jim Crow rules are still alive and well. You see scenes in the movie where they're riding on a bus. Even the guy called Bayou, when he comes back from war, he's riding on a bus, and there's a line in the bus that says blacks only. Obviously, that's in the back of the bus, says blacks only, and the white folks are sitting in the front of the bus. Um, but it's a classic Cinderella tale where the main character was the darkest person in his family, and because he's the darkest person in his family, everybody treated him differently. His dad hated him. His brother hated him. His mom was the only one that kind of liked him, and he was, and throughout the entire story, his brother Willie Earl was just giving him a hard time, and it just so turned around when the tables turned around and he got a break. Willie Earl just envied him, just hated him. And you'll see how it all ends. I don't want to spoil it for you. Really good show. Check it out. But throughout the movie, what the evidence of racism and classism and colorism was captured very well in that show. And you see, I've spoken about it even, and it was pointed out to me even while I was watching it because of something I had said. Sometimes we can, have a negative connotation toward a person because they're darker. If you are in fact a colorist, or colorism is something that is deep rooted in you, whether or not you realize that it is. I've often said it that sometimes I feel like back in the day, even if you bring the little dark girl to home to introduce her to your mom or whatever, your parents even back in the day would take a shine to the girl of lighter complexion more. And it's just because the roots of lighter being better and darker not being desired was so entrenched into our society, even post slavery, that it really messed people up, black people and white people alike. I mean, there's a character in the show, Leanne, who is black but was light enough, moved out of state, projected herself as white to elevate her status. You know what I mean? And it's crazy. There's and I think what came out of the movie for me is covetousness. Covetousness. Now, this is one of the things they talk about in the Bible. You shouldn't covet your neighbor. And covetousness is something. When I was going to church back in the day, Sunday school, most of the sermons was about fornication. All the pastor used to tell, all the pastors, like every day, he preached about fornication like that was the only sin out there. But covetousness is it really comes through in that show. And it's just like you, even though you hate somebody, you think you're better than them, you still envy them for what they want, and you're covetous of it. And it comes out. Let me tell you, by the time the movie ends, you're gonna be yelling at your TV screen. You're gonna be so mad at this guy. You're gonna hate him. He captures the character very, very well, and and it's a really, really good show. I was reluctant to watch it because yeah, I'm sick of those Medea movies myself. But Tyler Perry outdid himself on this one. He did good on this one. It's a good show. It's called A Jazzman's Blues. It's on Netflix. I'd say go check it out. Now, the other show I'm going to talk about real quickly before we bounce is called Dahmer Monster. It's called Dahmer. It says the subtext says Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, also on Netflix. Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Is that on Netflix or is it on Prime? I don't know. It's either on Netflix or Prime. But it's Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Now, the reason this stood out to me is because I think this movie is going to be viewed very, very differently for different racial groups of people. I think, let's just put it out there. I think black people are going to view the movie and see it one way, and I think white people are going to view the movie and see it another way. Now, as I was watching it, or as I was telling someone about it, I remember this comedian named Bill Burr. He's a white comedian married to a black woman, and they've been married for a long time. And he was saying he and his wife were watching Elvis, the movie Elvis that came out a little while ago, and it is on Netflix. Dahmer's on Netflix. So he said he and his wife were watching Elvis, and his wife was beside him, just he could tell that she was getting upset. Well, he was watching the same show she was watching, and it's like he could see some of the things, but he missed half of them. Like it was just her reaction that was telling him that somebody messed up. So he said he knew where it was gonna go. So he changed the channel. So she looks at him and she asks him, "Why did you change the channel?" It's like because he knows that if it continues like it's going, somehow he's gonna be blamed for all of this by the time the movie's over because he's white and she's black. So he figured he'd just cut it off at the end and change the channel before it goes any further, and he's guilty because he didn't do any of those things. But because of the nature of the context of the movie, he could see himself being in trouble behind it. Right? It's almost like he'd be held responsible for what his people did. Now, back to the movie Dahmer. I don't know if you see it or if you've seen even the ad for it or anything, but the ad for it, when it comes on, has Dahmer's neighbor, his black neighbor, because he lived in a black community. His black neighbor is on the phone calling 911, telling them, "I think somebody is killing someone next door." And the cop says to her, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yes, I think somebody is killing somebody next door." And the cop says to her, she should go over there and check. He's like, "What do you mean I should go over there and check? I'm telling you, somebody is killing somebody next door." And by the time the movie was over, I was so mad because let's go back to what the title said. The title says Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And they're portraying it as if Jeffrey Dahmer is the monster. But Jeffrey Dahmer isn't the only monster in this movie, because the way that he was allowed to do what he was allowed to do for as long as he was allowed to do it, when his neighbor literally called the police hundreds of times and told her, "My neighbor is killing people next door." The police even came one time. He had one of the people that he ended up killing with him who had gotten away and gotten outside. The police come catch him with the person, comes back to the hotel, to the room. He tells them he had meat that went bad. That's where the smell is come from. That's all the dead people that he has in the house. And somehow the cops leave. Somehow the cops leave. And he continues and he kills that guy. And he kills several people after that. And the cops that came ended up getting commendations. The cops that came while the serial killer was in possession of one of his victims and left without arresting said serial killer and left him with the victim got commendations. So the title of the movie is Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. And they're portraying Jeffrey Dahmer, the monster. But as I'm watching the movie, I'm seeing systemic racism, is what I'm seeing. Systemic racism is what I see through and through the whole entire film from the start to finish. And the fact that most of the people he killed were black doesn't help the case at all. You see what I'm saying? And it's so crazy. At one point in the movie, um, he after he was actually eventually arrested, um, the neighbor was coming home with her daughter and saw a bunch of white guys taking pictures, like making standing up in front of the door and doing things and taking pictures in front of the building. And the girl grabbed the camera, hit the camera out his hand, and pushed him. How about the cops came, knocked on the door, and took her away in cuffs for hitting the camera out the guy and pushing him? Even though when the black woman called 911 a dozen times and said, "My neighbor is next door murdering people," which he was in fact doing, the cops either didn't come, told her to go look, or came and left without arresting the guy. And he actually, and when they found out after the fact, the guys that had came and left got commendations. They were not sent off the force. Everybody was clapping them when they were reinstated. And it's like, what? And mind you, Jeffrey Dahmer's story is a true story. It's a real story. Both of these stories are true stories. Both of these stories. In fact, let me bounce back real quick. There was something I meant to say about the Jazzman's Blues, the Tyler Perry movie, and the thing that they wanted to lynch the guy for in the movie was supposedly whistling at a white woman. Whistling at a white woman. That's what he did. White woman goes by and he whistled at her. And that crime back in the 1930s in the United States was punishable by death. By death. Right? So, yeah. Like I said, busy week, busy week. And I guess, and I don't know, people could watch these movies and don't see it the way I see it. They could watch it and they just have different perspectives on it, and that's fine. But when I see this and I realize that this is real, this is not made up, this is real, this is the world we live in. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna say one thing before I read something for y'all. Um, Systemic racism. This is true. Um, I actually didn't realize he mostly killed black people. Yes, he did. Black and not white people. He killed some other race people as well. But yeah, the boy had problems. They knew he had problems. He should have never been allowed to go as far as he ended up going. And if the police didn't view black people the way they do at the time, it would not have been allowed to happen. Systemic racism and how it affects perception is really what took that so far. You know what I mean? And the last thing I said I was going to say is, and so check those movie out, the Jazzman's Blues, and that Dahmer series. Check that out. Those are pretty lit. Also, um, what was I going to say? I don't know. But what a week, huh? What a week. All right. Like I said, we're going to make it quick today. And I'm going to do another show like this for y'all. I really wish I had time, because if I had time, I'd have shown you the clips from the hurricane. I'd have shown you the clips from the movies and so on. So if you didn't know, then it would have been more real for you. But then it doesn't. Now, this way, I don't spoil it for you. This way, I don't spoil it for you. You actually get the opportunity to go out there and check it out for yourself. All right. So I figured today would be fitting to read a poem that I have called Predator for you before I get up off this piece. It's called Predator. It is, in fact, in the book. Um, and I think, in fact, I know I wrote this poem right after watching an episode of Criminal Minds. Is it Criminal Minds? It's either Criminal Minds or Hannibal. One of them. I like Criminal Minds and I like Hannibal. And I wrote Predator after watching an episode of one of those shows. And because I was talking about Dahmer and all that stuff, I figured let me read Predator for you. So it says Predator. I lie, I cheat, I kill. This is my way, this is my will. I lure, I trick, I feed. This is my way, these are my needs. I am the one you hate to love. I am the one you love to hate. Their emotions run like a flood. I am the enemy at the gate. My disguises are always many. My ulterior motives always few. I leave a trail of utter heartbreak, sentence pronounced from the woo. I pray, but I do not repent. I cry with ill intent. My conscience has no remorse, more high ground on my horse. I compartmentalize my rage, tricks up my sleeve for days. No remorse, no regrets, forgiven for sins not committed yet. A wolf clothed as a sheep, enjoying the flavor of the week, equipped with all the right words to say, a vampire immune to lights of day. The silent voice you wish you ignored, the face that stands out in the crowd, the indiscretion you wish no one knew, the burning desire you can't subdue, the predator. Yo, youth. That was it, folks. That was the predator. And yeah, that one is a little creepy, isn't it? It can be. It has some creepy potential in it, man. But that was a predator, and I'm not even gonna get into it. I think my voice is done. I think my voice is done. So I'm done. All right, people. So I hope you like the spin we did on the show today. I hope you like the spin we did on the show today. I might give y'all a couple more like this coming up here in the future. But I figured there was too much going on this week for me to not get into a little bit, a little bit. All right. And that's the ball game, and I'm out.